Yellow, derived energy. For this video I'm going to do a happiness survey poll. Okay, and there was an article that I read on the internet, and included in the article is a happiness survey poll. So I'm going to read out the quick article, and then I'm going to do the survey and talk through the reasons why I provide the answers that I do. Okay, so it says, test your happiness. Psychologists say it is possible to measure your happiness. I mean, the very first sentence, and they've made a mistake there. Not all psychologists say that it's possible to measure your happiness. Many social constructionists, for example, have big issues with attempting to measure happiness quantitatively, or even qualitatively. You know, I liken consciousness to, in William James' words, a blooming, buzzing confusion. You know, thoughts and feelings and sensations and memories and emotions cascade into my mind and flicker in and out of existence, but we think that there's an eye there that's solid, but it's a sky hook because there's no eye to hook these things onto. They're just chemical reactions in my brain which produce these fleeting and conflicting emotions and feelings and sensations. So how could you possibly measure something like that in any kind of objective manner? This test is designed by psychologist Professor Ed Diener from the University of Illinois. It takes just a minute to complete. Okay, so it's feasible that these kind of happiness surveys could have an influence on whether somebody thinks it's ethical to have children because they think they're happy at a given time. That gives them a justification, an ethical justification to play God and create a new sentient self-reflexive manifestation of energy in an amoral and meaningless universe. But I clearly would like to raise even some objections to this. Okay, so, and I mean, I think you should take more than a minute to complete a happiness survey. You know, I mean, I spend more time tying my shoelaces than assessing whether I'm happy or not. So, I mean, this is the kind of lack of thinking people have when they consider whether they're happy or not. Right, to find out how happy you are, just look at the 5 statements below and decide whether you agree or disagree using a 1 to 7 scale. So it's employing a Likert scale here. So it's a quantitative methodology, and there are all sorts of issues with using these kinds of scales in order to determine how happy someone is. I mean, first of all, you've got the social desirability bias, so people are more likely to respond with answers that they feel are pleasing for people to read about. And also there's the optimism bias. You know, people are generally hopeless Pollyannas. Please be open and honest in your responding. Yeah, I will be open and honest. Remember, your answers are totally private. Well, they're not, because I'm broadcasting it on YouTube, but never mind. Once you have answered all 5 questions, press submit and we will calculate your score. You will then be able to read Professor Diener's analysis. Professor Wiener, more like. And the scale is 1 strongly disagree, 2 disagree, 3 slightly disagree, 4 neither agree nor disagree, 5 slightly agree, 6 agree, 7 strongly agree. Okay, so let's look at the first question. In what way, in most ways, my life is ideal? So ideal implies perfection. The best way something could possibly be, perfection. So I'm going to give my life, in most ways my life is ideal. I'm going to give that a strongly disagree, because I strongly disagree that there is anything that's perfect about sentience. I mean, it's non-existence is the best state to be, for reasons that I've gone into for the last 100 videos. Right, so number 2, the conditions of my life are excellent. There's not so much to do with the actual conditions, it's more to do with the subjective appraisal of those conditions. And if I'm going to be objective, if there are conditions that are perceived by a sentience, then that means that there's somebody who exists to make that analysis, and if there's somebody existent to make that analysis, then they've been harmed by being brought into existence. So I'm going to strongly disagree with that one. So, there we go. I am satisfied with my life. Well, I'm going to strongly disagree with that one, because there's nothing to be satisfied in terms of comparing it to non-existence, because I wouldn't have been deprived of any satisfaction that I currently experience if I'd never come into existence. So that's a strongly disagree. Number 4, so far I've gotten the important things I want in life. Well, whether I want something or not is something that was injected into me by being brought into existence. So I've never been brought into existence, and there would be nothing that I would want. So therefore, non-existence of sentience doesn't confer an advantage over sentience. So I'm going to give that a 1. Strongly disagree. Right, and final question. If I could live my life over, I would change almost nothing. I mean, that's a horrid thing to say. I mean, isn't living one life bad enough? Then I would have to die twice. Then I would have to mourn because my parents died twice. Then I would get, every time I've been sick or ill, that would happen twice. So I'm going to just strongly disagree with that comment there. And then you hit the analysis button, and then it gives you a little readout. Let's see what it says. It says extremely dissatisfied. Yeah, I mean, being born logically is a source for an extreme amount of dissatisfaction, because you've been deprived of being in a state when you wouldn't have been deprived of anything, and you wouldn't have been exposed to any pain, suffering, or the final inevitable death that we all face. So yes, I think sentience and existence is an extremely unsatisfactory state of affairs. People who score in this range are usually extremely unhappy with their current life. And I'm not extremely unhappy with my current life in an emotional, subjective state of mind at the current moment in time, but if I filter my emotions through my intellect and my reason, I can see that I was harmed by being brought into existence. So therefore, I think it's rational to be extremely unhappy with your current life. In some cases, this is in reaction to some recent bad events, such as the death of a loved one or unemployment. Well, there hasn't been a recent bad event. I haven't lost a loved one, and although I'm currently unemployed, I've only been out of work for a month, and I've got a job interview coming up next week, and I'm very optimistic about that. So that is not the source for my dissatisfaction. This dissatisfaction can be a response to a continuing problem, such as alcoholism or addiction. Well, I'm not an alcoholic. I mean, it was my birthday yesterday and I only had 2 bottles of beer, and I'm not suffering from any drug or gambling addictions. In other cases, the extreme dissatisfaction is a reaction due to something bad in life, such as recently having lost a loved one. Well, as I said, I haven't lost a loved one, but I do anticipate that I will lose a loved one, my parents, in the next 1 or 2 decades. So that will be extremely harmful to me, and I anticipate that. However, dissatisfaction at this level is often due to dissatisfaction in multiple areas of life. Well, I think it's rational to be dissatisfied with multiple areas of life, because every single pain and discomfort and harm that I have and will experience is a result of being born and being exposed to these things. It may be that the help of others are needed, a friend or family member, counselling with a member of the clergy. A member of the clergy, you mean that insane, deluded rabble, or help from a psychologist or other counsellor. Well, the problem is, psychologists take for read the happiness is a state of good mental health, but if you have good mental health and you're seeing the world and sentience in an objective way, then that's not going to make you happy, but you will have a realistic appraisal of the human condition, and that will prevent you from procreating and inflicting unnecessary pain, suffering and death on your child. If the dissatisfaction persists, you need to change, and often others can help you. Talk to your GP or contact a mental health organisation. So insane, irrational animals who work as psychologists can try to brainwash me into thinking that I would have been deprived of my happiness if I hadn't come into existence, or otherwise they'll try to drug me into a stupor, so I'm deluded that I think that you can actually benefit somebody by bringing them into existence for their own sake. Cheers.